welcome back to House to Home. We're so excited because we're recording today's episode from our very own SoConCon here in Indianapolis. My name is Grace Youngson, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Joseph Kohm. This is a podcast brought to you by Family Policy Alliance Foundation. And without further ado, Joseph, will you tell us more about what we're doing here?
Yes, I would love to, Grace. Thank you. Excellent. Yes, we're here from Indianapolis at SoConCon 2025. So folks are probably asking, what is SoConCon? SoConCon stands for Social Conservative Policy Conference. This is FPA's premier conference. It happens every year. We started it a few years ago, and it's morphed into the premier gathering for social conservative policymakers and influencers in America. So this year we are here at Indianapolis. This conference is also happening concurrently with two of our other conferences that we're putting on every year, which is our State Family Policy Conference. We bring together all the state family policy councils from across the country, convene them here to strategize and do business. And it's also happening with our Statesman Academy, which happens also every year. That's our training academy for newly minted state legislators who are people of faith. We train them in biblical worldview and how to effectively apply that worldview in their work as politicians in their state houses. That's happening all week. So you have all three conferences going on at the same time. We jokingly call it the mega conference on our staff, but it makes for great cross-pollination. And for your sake, as a House to Home listener, it makes for great guests. So we're going to have a lot of good guests on this week, Grace. I think our audience is really going to be excited about that. We're going to be sampling our speakers, giving you a little peek into the conference. And the next episode or two, at least, will be made up of short, probably 10-minute-ish interviews with these guests because we want to make the most of their time and of ours. So we're excited for what the future holds here this week.
Yeah, we're super excited. You guys are not going to want to miss the guests that we'll be interviewing. So we'll see you in a second.
Hello, everyone. We're back from SoConCon 2025, and right now I have the great privilege of interviewing one of my colleagues and friends, Mitch Prosser. You are the Vice President of North Carolina Family Policy Council, which is the family policy council in the great state of North Carolina. My southern neighbor is a Virginian. So you guys have just done a great job this recent legislative session. Just tell our audience for now about some of the pro-family wins you've gotten out of this session, what kind of state of play is in North Carolina.
Thank you so much, Joseph. Yeah, we've had a great session so far. We're not out of the woods yet. Our legislature is still convening. In fact, next week, July the 29th and 30th, they'll be coming together to either override some vetoes or form some sort of adjournment resolution or something like that. But North Carolina family has certainly had some great victories and wins this past legislative session or this legislative session. We've made sure that children have the ability to go to school, the school that their parents choose for them. Another great victory that we had on parents, for parents, was the ability for parents to raise their children as boy or girl, their biological sex, without having to worry about government reprisal or the government coming in and saying, we've got you here. And, there's states, you know this well, with that national platform, there are states around the country who are threatening parents right now with that. And we're saying, no offense to Jonathan Keller or any of our friends in California, don't bring your California to our Carolina. We don't want that, that way of thinking, to threaten a parent or for them to even have the fear of their son or their daughter coming to them and saying, hey, I'm not sure. We want them to be able to parent from a place of a biblical worldview, but the safety net of knowing that they can instill those virtues and promote that biblical worldview in their child without having to fear the government or, whatever that actor is coming in and saying, you can't do that. So we saw that victory. That was an encouraging victory. And believe it or not, our governor signed that bill, which was really cool. He's vetoed a few others. One of those is on online safety. Believe it or not, it started as a social media literacy bill, just teaching school children and high schoolers the good, the bad, and the ugly of social media. And then it started gaining a few new components. There are some really good features of that are going to provide safety for children and the ability for parents to parent their children in a way that helps safeguard against some of the harms of not just social media, but internet usage as well. I'll tell you, one of the beautiful things that bill does is these things, and I've got mine in my lap, but these things distract us so easily. That bill includes a feature that allows school boards the opportunity, because they're really smart people, to create and instill a policy on cell phone usage or the lack thereof from bell to bell or during instructional time. So that's really encouraging. The governor has signed that, and so we're thankful for that. The one that I think is so awesome, and the governor has vetoed it, so we're waiting on votes to override, and we have a veto-proof supermajority in the Senate. We're one vote shy in the House, so that's why elections matter. HB 805 is a bill that originated, and it was bipartisan. In fact, one of the primary sponsors was a liberal Democrat, and another primary sponsor was a conservative pastor Republican. So it was a beautiful thing. They came together and built a bill that would basically eliminate or shut down the pornography industry based on consent. And we know that many of the images, videos, all of these things that are out there, clearly the person in the video did not consent to that image. And I'm looking over at your phone, porn kills love, and what that does to people and families and the people inside those videos. But after crossover, it took on a life of its own and several other things. My favorite feature of the bill is that it would, for the very first time, define male, female, boy, girl, mother, father in state code, which if we'd have gone back and told ourselves even like 5 years ago that we were going to need that, we probably would have been like, I don't think so. Today and in the future, we certainly need that. And we're hoping and praying for the people to override the governor's veto on that bill.
All such encouraging updates, Mitch. So thank you and John Rustin, your president of North Carolina Family Policy Council, for your work for North Carolina families. Just that internet safety bill alone would do so much to protect kids and their innocence, make sure parents remain the guardians of their kids' innocence again. I mean, what a blessing that would be. And I'll just end this update by saying I'm so glad you mentioned the parental rights bill, because for our audience out there, parental rights is a huge focus at SoConCon this year. You're from North Carolina. We are here at the conference in Indiana. Indiana was first, North Carolina was second to pass laws that say a parent cannot be defined as abusive simply for raising their son or daughter in accordance with their biological sex. Whereas other states like Colorado, which FPA opposed this bill, are coming after parents for not affirming their child's so-called gender identity. So it's great that states like Indiana and North Carolina are really leading the charge to protect parental rights. FPA is really focused on that, and we're hoping to make a lot of progress for that here at the conference and going into next year. So, Mitch, thanks for this update. Folks, we'll be back with more interviews again soon from SoConCon.
The attack on children online has gone too far. Most kids have been exposed to porn by age 13. That's why we created Tech Ready Family to bring you back control as parents. We believe that no parent should lack peace of mind over their child's safety online. Through our revolutionary Tech Ready Family course, you will gain understanding of the impacts of screen time and technology on the brain, and discover the tools you need to mitigate the risks. So, don't wait. Get our Tech Ready Family course today and protect your children.
Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be here with who is becoming a good friend of mine, Becca Delahunt. Becca is the policy director at Minnesota Family Council, and we actually recorded this session at SoConCon, but unfortunately had some technology issues, and so we're re-recording it, which I'm so grateful to Becca for being willing to do that, because I think it's really important that we highlight what is going on in Minnesota, as there seems to be a lot this year, a lot of craziness too. Becca, can you tell us a little bit more what's been going on?
Yes, absolutely, Grace. Well, thanks for having me. It's wonderful to be with you and to talk about what's happening in Minnesota. Well, sadly, I feel like Minnesota is regularly in the news lately with some really difficult news. I'm sure folks heard that our former long serving Speaker of the House, Melissa Hortman, was actually assassinated June 14th with her husband in a targeted political attack, along with several other legislators being targeted. Praise the Lord, nobody else died. But we do have a state senator who is still in rehab. He and his wife were both shot multiple times and they survived and they're in rehab. But our long serving Speaker of the House passed away. And so we have a special election coming up for her seat. We also have other special elections. We had a senator pass away, just natural causes. And so there's a special election there. And we also have a senator who was convicted of breaking into her stepmom's home. That conviction just came down. And so there'll be a special election there. So there's multiple special elections happening, Grace, which is interesting because we also have a split House. We have 67 Republicans and 67 Democrats, or at least we did until former Speaker Hortman passed away. And so we are headed into kind of some uncertainty about what's going to happen this fall with those elections. And it's not even a regular election year. You know, next year is when a lot of these legislators are going to be on the ballot for the midterm elections. But all of that, that tightness in the House produced a really interesting legislative session in 2025. The legislature was done with their work by the time that Melissa Hortman was assassinated. So we did have that split House through session, which ended with some really interesting legislative activity that I want to get into. But I just wanted folks to be aware that we're kind of coming with sort of a unique context into this next legislative year as we're still reeling from that and still mourning that loss. It's so strange, Grace. This isn't DC. We don't have
this is crazy.
Yeah.
May I ask, so surrounding the assassination, was there like a build up to that? Was there tension over particular issues? Was it a shock? How did that transpire?
Absolutely. Well, there is a lot of uncertainty as to why legislators were targeted. Vance Bolter is currently in federal custody. I know his trial proceedings are still forthcoming, but it's unclear as to why he targeted. He was formerly a Democrat governor appointee to a security position, but then also there's some reason to believe that he had some conservative leanings as well. He was involved in church in Minnesota. There's a lot of confusing information about him. And so we're not exactly sure the motivation, but kind of the media push after this assassination was that Representative Hortman had agreed to vote with the Republicans to stop Minnesota Care from extending to adults who are here illegally. So we had healthcare coverage for folks who are here illegally. Children are still covered under that healthcare, but she decided to get the budget passed at the end of session. She decided to vote with Republicans. That was sort of her leadership decision, was to make that compromise, even though she did not believe in that. And I think a lot of folks assume that this was the reason for the assassination. But I think when you get into the history of the man who's currently in custody, it's a little bit more confusing. And sadly, Grace, I think it's going to be hard to find the real answer as to why this happened.
Wow, it's so crazy. And it just reminds me, you know, here at Family Policy Alliance, we're this alliance of 40-ish FPC organizations. And hearing stories like this, it just really brings back to home the fact that you guys really are on the front lines. Like there's life and death on the line with this kind of stuff, this kind of work. And the kind of things that you're protecting are highly controversial sometimes, and you know, the issues that really shouldn't be, but unfortunately in our culture they are. And I think it's just what part of the goal having you on is to highlight what Minnesota FPC is doing so that
Right.
our audience is more aware of what's going on. And I think that this is kind of a sobering reminder of just the
Right.
seriousness of this work. So
It is.
thank you for
when you get
sharing.
when you get into the states, it ends up, yes, there's issues that are more partisan, but also we have relationships with, I've worked with Senator Hoffman on things in the past, and another senator who was targeted, who's a Democrat. We have a great working relationship. And I texted her afterward. I'm like, I'm so thankful you're still here. Like, we had a nice exchange, but it's like, I mean, it's just shocking. You don't think that this is going to happen to people that you know. And it just happened to our state civil servants. And so, yeah, we really wanted to reach out to people and show like the love of Christ does not stop. The love that we want to extend does not stop simply because we don't agree on many of the issues that folks have voted on. We don't wish this upon anyone. And so it's been a hard thing for our state to go through, but the institution continues, and they'll be back for a legislative session in 2026. But I know we wanted to chat also about issues that we worked on in 2025 too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that you just mentioned there, though, is so powerful that, although there is political divide in America, as Christians, we're also responsible to be the hands and feet of Jesus, the light
Right.
of the world, and
Right.
carry forth his witness in the way that we deal in this like crazy polarized
I know.
culture. And so I think that just the way that you guys responded is so incredible in terms of that Christian witness. So I know we want to get into some things that happened. We were talking a little bit before recording this about a constitutional amendment that took place, and that was a pretty big deal. Could you tell
Right.
the audience a little bit more about what happened with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, so there is this issue that Minnesota Family Council has faced for many years, and actually this has been discussed at the federal level too. It's called the Equal Rights Amendment. And Grace, it's anything but. It is a proposed amendment both at the federal level, but we're really focused here on the state level where it's had some movement over the past years. And it would give constitutional protection for abortion, so-called gender identity, and also no protections for religious freedom. Thankfully, it has not passed. It got really close at the end of the 2024 session, but it did not pass. They ran out of time, and there was there's also some concerns about the lack of protection for religious freedom on the Senate side. But it's interesting, Grace, because we have protections for abortion up until the moment of birth in Minnesota in statute. We also have protections for gender identity, but we do not have this enshrined in our Constitution. So, of course, the Constitution is the highest level of law in America's system, in the state system, or at the federal level. And this proposed constitutional amendment would really be used as a way to drive judges' interpretations of law in order to really come up against religious freedom of both religious institutions and the free speech rights of Minnesotans. And so you think about so many different contexts in which this could have an impact, like schools or churches, various public spaces like girls sports, which we're going to talk about as well, but also private spaces like prison facilities, locker rooms. There would be constitutional protection for anyone of any gender identity to access whatever facility they seek. And so I think this is such a huge issue that our eyes can kind of glaze over because we're used to these things happening in the news. However, giving constitutional protection for these sorts of things would be just the next level, and it really would be a generational push to try to change that. And thankfully, there is concern about this. I mean, I know that you've talked to others from the Family Policy Council movement who've talked about support for protecting girls' sports for female athletes. That issue has really brought to the forefront just some key tangible differences between males and females and why we need to protect women and children. And this issue of gender identity always impacts women and children the hardest. We have to pay the cost of males who supposedly, identify as women. There are so many news articles in like local Minnesota, the Minnesota news publication Alpha News, Grace, that I would point Minnesotans to about all of the males being housed at Minnesota's female-only prison, Shakopee Women's Prison. And it's just incredible to me how, folks who have sexual predatory history or who have violent offender history have been housed at Shakopee Women's Prison. And they can do that because it's the policy of the agency. However, if this state constitutional amendment would pass, then they'd have the Constitution protecting these sorts of things. So it's just a completely different level of legal protection. And so we're trying to raise awareness. I do believe, together with the help of some allies, we've been able to slow it down, which has been great. But we anticipate that again, another push for that again in the coming years. And so I just wanted folks to be aware about all of our efforts on that front.
Yeah, that's really crazy. And I think what's crazy about it is, you mentioned that already in your guys' law, abortion, gender stuff is pretty well, unfortunately, protected. And to be pushing even further, it just shows the radicalism on that.
Right.
And I think that is something that I know that it hasn't just been Minnesota that there has been that kind of push. This has been in different states. And I do think that as one state starts doing something, if it goes through, it almost can become precedent. And so it's so important whatever state listeners are listening from, this has ripple effects. So thank you so much for sharing on that. I think that's really key.
Absolutely.
Could you also tell us a little bit about what is going on or what has gone on with Save Girls Sports? I know that there was a big push for that earlier this year, and I'm sure our audience would love to hear what has happened in Minnesota regarding that issue.
Absolutely. Yeah, we early in the legislative session, House Republicans made the protection of girls' sports in Minnesota a legislative focus. And again, this is one of those complicated Minnesota things, Grace. Coming out of the November election, we had that split House, but then news surfaced that one of the Democrat members who had won was not a resident of his district, which is not legal. You have to live in the district that you represent. And so Democrats actually House Democrats boycotted the beginning of legislative session. So Republicans ran like, okay, we got the reins here. We're going to run with our priorities. Eventually Democrats came back. But during that time, they got movement on saving girls, legislative efforts to save girls' sports. And so we had a big hearing. We brought in like 10 testifiers, several high school athletes, I think 3 or 4 medical doctors, a couple pediatricians, pediatric endocrinologist, a sports medicine doctor, an athletic director, to talk about the importance of preserving girls' athletics for female athletes in Minnesota. And unfortunately, when it came to the floor, it did fail to pass with the majority vote. It was laid on the table so they could revisit it again if the legislative makeup is more favorable to this issue in the future. But that was a really big push. And that was unique for Minnesota, Grace, because folks from Minnesota will remember for the past couple of years, we've had a Democrat trifecta. We have Governor Walz in the governor's office, and we had a Democrat majority Senate and a Democrat majority House. And so to have kind of a big social issue at the forefront of Republicans' minds was exciting. Didn't cross the finish line, but we were heavily engaged in that. We helped with, bill authorship, helping to get the right language, and then also helping to provide the people who will give testimony to why this is so important. So that was exciting. But as is many things in Minnesota, difficult to come up against, the cultural majority with this issue. And so we will continue to make the case for girls' sports in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's definitely exciting to hear about some of the positive shifts that are happening. And, I think as we know, and everyone who follows us knows, policy is not necessarily a quick game. And something that I've definitely observed is
oftentimes I think that on our side of things, we're a little bit too quick to give up or too quick to be like, oh, that didn't work. And it's interesting because often the other side will stop at nothing. And even when they're having like the worst season, they're strategizing and going to fight back. And I just think about the scripture that talks about the righteous being bold as lions and the fact that God's on our side. We're supposed to have courage. And so even when things are not perfect, again, it comes back to like our Christian witness and who God has made us to be in the way that we carry ourselves. As we are coming to an end of this conversation, do you have any final things you would want to share that's going on in Minnesota? Tell people how they can find out more about Minnesota Family Council and what you guys are doing. Feel free to share whatever.
Thank you. Yes. Well, we would love to be in touch with you. You can sign up for our regular email communications at mfc.org to receive regular email communications from us. We also have a podcast. There's more information on our website there, but you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on YouTube. And then also, if you are an attendee at a church or if you are a pastor, we have a effort called the Church Ambassador Network, where we bring pastors to the Capitol to meet with legislators, to get to know them and to pray for them. And it's a really cool engagement opportunity to bring the ministers of the church together with the ministers of government. And so if you'd like to learn more about that, reach out to us and we'd love to share more with you about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know that the Church Ambassador Network isn't just present in Minnesota, it's present in several states. So it's very likely that whatever state you're in, there will be a Church Ambassador Network there too. So thank you so much for sharing, Becca. It was so great to get to talk again and so great to just hear about what is going on in Minnesota. Thank you to everyone who listened to this episode. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, share it with your friends. You can find out more at our website, familypolicyalliance.com. Also, go ahead, follow us on social media. Our handle is family_policy. And don't forget to check this out next week. We'll be back with another amazing interview.